My philosophy is very simple. It's been transmitted by my mom, and for me, food is an act of love, and the garden is at the very center of this love. In this episode, we will celebrate the mighty rhubarb.
Hello, my name is Nadia Pearson. I'm a gardener at Manoir at Quat'Saisons. I've been gardening here for 2.5 years. Most of the time I work in the ornamental area at Manoir at Quat'Saisons, but today I'm going to talk about rhubarb. Rhubarb is a hardy perennial vegetable. It's very easy to grow, low maintenance. We have a big patch of rhubarb in our vegetable garden. Rhubarb that we grow here at Manoir at Quat'Saisons, the cultivar is called Semple early. It is the first early cultivar. It's a very good cropper and it makes it brilliant for forcing. We start forcing rhubarb in winter, in mid-winter, and you can start picking it in March, mid-March, end of March. Forcing has some benefits. It makes rhubarb stalks soft, tender, sweeter, and the color is even more red. So considering that rhubarb is a perennial vegetable, we don't plant it every single year. So rhubarb grows for many years. Every few years you need to lift rhubarb, divide rhubarb and plant it back. So the best time to lift rhubarb is mid-autumn till March. And we lift rhubarb in November and we split rhubarb using a spade. Rhubarb grows well in an open, sunny space. It will cope in a shady position as well. Rhubarb is a low-maintenance plant. It doesn't need watering. You can only water it in a very long, dry spells in summer. Freshly planted rhubarb require watering regularly during the first growing season. Botanical name is rhubarbarum. Rhubarbarum, a part of this word is Ra. It was grown along the river that used to be called Ra, and now it is the Volga River. So that's why it has this rhubarbarum. Rhubarb has been known for over 5,000 years. First it was found in Asia, and it's about 2700 BC. And it was very popular in that part of the world. It was used for medicinal purposes, and Marco Polo in the 13th century discovered it, and rhubarb made its way west. We start harvesting rhubarb in mid-March. Ideally, you should pick a stem that is about 30 centimeters long with a leaf that has just opened. And you can see we have rhubarb that is grown under forcing jars and rhubarb that is grown outside. How to properly pick rhubarb? You choose the stem that is about 30 centimeters long. You keep the stem, you hold the stem at the base, you twist it gently, easing it out from the ground. This is how we pick our rhubarb. Ideally, you shouldn't snap rhubarb or you shouldn't cut rhubarb, because if you leave a little stem, it will cause some rotting. Rhubarb can suffer from some pests and diseases. Slugs and snails can affect rhubarb. You can use physical ways to control. You can use different barriers. You can pick them manually, ideally at night with a torch, or you can use biological control. You can use nematodes. It's a very interesting thing. My parents grow rhubarb, but they don't use it. When I moved to this country, I discovered that rhubarb is a vegetable and you can use it in many recipes. And here at Manoir at Quat'Saisons, we use it in sweet dishes and we use it in savory dishes. So it's a very versatile vegetable that can be used in both dishes. When I came back home, I actually told my mother, jam is quite interesting. You can use it in jam with some ginger, and it has very interesting color. It has deep color if you use red cultivars of rhubarb, or you can use it in savory dishes. But as a vegetable, it's not as popular as it is here. So just very interesting thing.
Hi, I'm Adam Johnson. I'm Director of Operations here at Le Manoir, and I've worked for Raymond Blanc now for 20 years. Today I'm going to show you a really simple rhubarb and custard tart. So first we're going to cook the rhubarb. We prepare that by taking the ends off and the leaves. And the leaves are not edible, so we wouldn't want to eat those. Now we just chop the rhubarb into smaller pieces. Pop that into our saucepan or frying pan. We're going to sprinkle with a little bit of sugar. Now we need the sugar for a bit of sweetness because the rhubarb is quite tart, so we get that nice sweet and sour flavour. And also the sugar will, we call it maceration, it draws out the juices of the rhubarb, intensifies the flavour and adds a bit of sweetness into the rhubarb itself. And another little tip, we're going to add a little bit of ginger just for a bit of spice. Rhubarb and ginger go really well together, so we'll just grate that up nice and fine. Don't worry about peeling the ginger either. The skin of the ginger tastes of ginger as well. Just make sure it's nice and clean. Now we give that a little stir. Rhubarb is known as a spring vegetable, and best time is around March, where you get the lovely false rhubarb, but you can eat it all year round up to winter when the plant naturally dies back. You will get a more stronger flavour from the rhubarb after spring as it grows and develops and gets a bit bigger. But the first spring rhubarb is usually forced, it's very pink. It has a little tartness, but balanced with a bit of sugar is delicious. So we're going to leave the sugar on the rhubarb covered to one side for about 20 minutes to half an hour and allow the juices to come out as it macerates. Simple, quick, thickened custard, or the professional chefs call it creme pâtissière. So we've got a little bit of flour, corn flour, caster sugar, 2 egg yolks, some vanilla and a little milk. So we'll start by putting the flour and the corn flour in the pan with the sugar. So we're going to add 2 egg yolks to the mixture. And this will give it richness, flavour, and it'll help to thicken it along with the flour. So just give that a little whisk. So one of the mistakes you might come across when making your own custard is that you heat it up too much. You want to get it just to that point where it starts to thicken and take it off the heat and allow the residual heat of the pan to carry on cooking the custard to its perfect temperature. So you know when you've got the perfect thickness when you see the first bubble breaking the surface and it will lightly coat the back of a spoon. Just going to add a little bit of vanilla puree or extract or essence, whatever you've got. So a little bit of flavouring there. So on a small batch like this, we're just going to use the cold milk. Normally you would add warm milk to make a big batch of this custard. So we're using a full fat milk, loads of flavour, loads of richness. This is a treat, so we don't want to skimp on the flavour. We'll just make sure that egg yolk is mixed through the milk. And now we're going to turn the hob on, and then we're going to whisk. Make sure you get right in the corners of the pan if there is any corners. If you've got a nice rounded base on the pan, more the better. And just keep an eye on the heat. You don't want it to come up too quickly. It is easier to make a larger batch of custard. So if you do make a bit too much, you can always store it in the fridge for a day or two covered, but wouldn't leave it any longer than a couple of days in the fridge. So as it starts to thicken, you can take it off the heat and just restrict that momentum of heat from overcooking your custard. You can see it's starting to thicken up nicely now. So the creme pâtissière, or the thickened custard, is just at the right consistency now. As it cools, it's going to get a little thicker, so if it's a bit too thick for piping, you can add a splash of double cream just to loosen it a little bit. So put that to one side while it cools, and we'll take a look at the rhubarb. So this has been macerating now for 15 minutes. The longer you leave it, the more juices that will come out, but there's some lovely juices in there now, so we could go on to cook this. So I'm just going to bring this up to a gentle simmer, and as it starts to bubble and steam, we'll just give it about 30 seconds because these are quite small, quite delicate, quite young spring rhubarb. So just 30 seconds on a gentle simmer, and we'll leave that to one side to carry on cooking. So it's just coming up to a simmer now. A few more seconds. We don't want to boil off all that juice either. We want to keep that trapped inside and allow the residual steam to cook the rhubarb. So pop that to one side. As it cools, it carries on cooking the rhubarb. So now the rhubarb has cooled and finished cooking, it's taken on a really pink flavour. It looks fantastic. So we're just going to take out maybe 4 pieces to fill one tart, and we'll trim those up. So take out the nicest looking ones. The trick with cooking this rhubarb is to get it so it's only just cooked with a tiny bit of bite. If you cook it a bit too much, the amount of liquid that's in the rhubarb is just going to turn it to mush, which is not good for this tart, but it's perfect for a compote which you could have with your breakfast, with your granola and yogurt, or you could have with some ice cream as a dessert. But just cooked rhubarb, I've got my tart cases here ready. And another little tip, we're going to take the tart case. I've got a little pastry cutter that's just about the size inside of the case, and then we can trim the rhubarb so hopefully it'll fit nice and neat and looks a little bit chefy. So this dessert can be as simple or as complicated as you want. You could make your own pastry, no problem. Have these pre-cooked in the freezer ready to go. You just take them from the freezer as and when you need them. They'll defrost in a matter of minutes, or you can go to the supermarket and cheat and just get some ready-made ones. So we've trimmed it up. We don't want to let any of these little bits go to waste, so you can always use that as a little compote, cook them down a bit further, or you don't have to be very chefy. You could just roughly chop the rhubarb and sprinkle it on the top. So now we're ready to fill the tart. I've got my creme patissiere in the piping bag ready to go, and we just want to fill this with loads of that lovely custard, that creme patissiere. When you're piping, practice makes perfect. Always do it with a smaller amount. You don't want an enormous bag filled with custard, so just do a small amount at a time, and make sure you don't overfill the tart case. You've got to leave room for some of the rhubarb. And then we just simply lift the rhubarb onto the top and hope that it fits. And then if there are any gaps where you can see the custard, that's okay, but you could always cover it up with a nice little edible viola flower from the garden. And there you have it. A nice little afternoon treat with lovely spring force rhubarb.